and welcome everyone to Brookside Middle School. I would like to take a moment to thank a few people for making this event possible. First, thank you, Mr. Frank, where are you? Our building principal over here, for allowing us, go ahead and give him a round of applause. For allowing us to read Mr. Sanford and Miss Griffith's book, It Started with a Helmet, in honor of the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this past September. Also, a thank you to Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, where are you? Our custodian, for helping set everything up. Our technology crew, Mr. Grega, Mr. Ferguson, and their 8th grade students as well. Thank you. Another big thank you goes out to Mrs. Kelly Freeze. Although she's not here, she's the one who made the beautiful cookies for all of us to enjoy this morning. And thank you to Cardinal PTO for their donation towards our mid-morning treat this morning. Also, a thank you to our VIP guests for taking the time out of your day to spend with us, including our local fire and police. We have the Board of Education represented here, and a host of other people. 8th graders, come on in. Go ahead and get your cookies and drinks. Those are our lovely students who were checking in our VIP and making sure they got down to the nest. Next, I want to say thank you to the 8th graders for opening your ears and hearts to this amazing book, and for also participating in the Zoom meeting with our authors earlier this year. I believe all of your heartfelt thank you letters to them have now been read on TikTok and Facebook. In turn, you have made a difference in other people's lives too. A special shout out goes to the 8th grade ELA honor students who helped plan, organize, carry out today's assembly. Our students filled out building. I'm so nervous, I talk in front of you all day long and I'm very nervous up here. They filled out building request forms, met with our custodian to make sure everything was in working order, created signs, and made invitations. They ordered the cookies, worked the PA system, helped check our visitors in, set up items, and the list goes on and on. So give yourself a round of applause, 8th graders. Furthermore, I could not have pulled this unit off without the help from my coworkers. Thank you for helping read the book to the students, attend our Zoom meeting, and adjust your schedule many times for us to complete each of the activities. Prior to reading It Started with a Helmet, most of our students knew very little about 9/11. I am proud and honored to say our current 8th grade class understands a lot more about this devastating day in our country's history. And more importantly, the compassion, aid, and unity we all saw people receiving that day and the weeks and months to come. I'm confident that when these students sitting here today think back to their middle school experiences, this will be at the top of their list. Lastly, I obviously can't thank Jerry Sanford and Chris Griffith enough for all of the attention, support, and love they have given to this class of approximately 130 students. I'm at a loss for words to explain how much this connection has meant to me over the last 6 months. I was in my first year of teaching when the attacks happened. It has always brought back a lot of emotion each year as I would reflect on what I was doing that day, trying to make sense of the world, and of course, wanting to help in any way I could. I feel 20 years later, the one thing I can do is never forget those who lost their lives that September morning and honor all of the brave men and women who helped in the recovery and relief efforts. I'm so humbled to be part of this chapter in Mr. Sanford and Miss Griffith's lives, and promise to continue to talk and educate our students about 9/11. Thank you for joining us today, and continue to share your story and message with others. Now, here are Alyssa and Kiara to introduce you and your book, and then the floor is all yours.
Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. My name is Kira Greathouse, and I would like to formally welcome everyone, including the first responders who have joined us today. As most of us are aware, the authors of a book that was read to us in Mrs. A. Ross's class have taken the time to come and speak to us today, for which we sincerely thank them. As the story goes, a retired fighter, Jerry Sanford, was given a vintage fire helmet dating back to the 1910s that belonged to Ladder 42, a firehouse in the Bronx where a man he knew, Tom Von Essen, worked. The date was set for him to return the helmet to the station, and he arrived in New York City on September 10, 2001. When he left for home the next day, he received news of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the crash in Pennsylvania. Days later, he returned to the city to assist at Ground Zero, doing anything he could to help in the crisis. Years later, Chris Griffith convinced him to write that very same book that we read at the beginning of the year. It started with the helmet. And now, without further ado, please welcome the authors of this beautiful story, Mr. Sanford and Ms. Griffith.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's an honor to be here. My God. It's wonderful. Before I go any further, I want to thank this beautiful lady next to me here. She recorded all my stories over the years. I always thought I would write a book because my stories are a little unusual. And last February, she said, if you'll be quiet for 10 minutes, I'd like you to read something. It's up in the clouds. So I'm just looking up. I have no idea what she's talking about, what a cloud is. And from that came this 12,000-word book that started with a helmet. So please, give my lady a nice round of applause. Excuse me, without her, I wouldn't be here, and this wouldn't be out there. Where do I start? You know, you guys are our future. You know, it's wonderful, the letters that you wrote, all of you. I can't thank you enough. We go on TikTok, I'm the old goat. You know, I talk to you kids at night all over the world about our little book and about life, you know, and how many of you didn't know anything about 9/11? And our little book here captures some of the things that happened that dreadful day. In fact, we just stopped at Shanksville, excuse me, and that was the third memorial grounds. Of course, I've been to New York and the Pentagon, and Shanksville is very moving. We were there a couple of days ago, and if you have an opportunity to go there, they made a beautiful, that's not really the right word, a very respectable area in Shanksville. And thank you for recognizing our book, and Chris and I. And I think the message I want to get out to you kids is help your community. You know, I've been in helping people business over 50 years, and I'm still doing it. I'm 83 years old, and I'm not going to stop. So if you have an elderly neighbor or you know of people that could use this assist, you can go to the store for them, or rake their leaves, or put out their garbage, or just check in on them. You know, that's what the helping people business is. My brothers are sitting right over here. They know exactly what I'm talking about. We put on this uniform, police officers somewhere here, I know he's here, same thing. And when you see a veteran wearing a hat, excuse me, and I'm an old veteran from way back, you know, go up and thank them for their service. You know, without them, the greatest generation, which we're losing at an alarming rate, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So when you see a veteran with a hat on, or a police officer, or a firefighter, thank them for what they do. Because it doesn't matter what your skin color is, how tall you are, how fat you are, your age, they're the first responders. And thank them. There he is now. There's the police. Let's have a round of applause for our police officer and the firefighter. Thank you, brothers. And a number of you, in the letters you wrote, you mentioned the survivor tree. And Chris and I stopped at a nursery and we bought a tree for you guys. While it's not the exact tree or the same species of the tree that's in New York, the survivor tree, in case you don't know what that is, months and months after the attacks, they were digging the debris in the site. And with these big cranes, and they're digging and digging, and they stopped when they saw something green sticking out of the debris, with all the metal and steel and plaster and everything. And they dug around it, around it, and went down deeper and deeper. It turned out it was a tree, some kind of a pear tree. I don't know the name of it. I know Chris would know. I don't know the name of it. Anyway, they dug around, dug, and they were able to safely excavate this tree. And they took it up to a nursery in the Bronx. And they kept it up there a couple of years until they nurtured it back. And that's the only thing that survived from 9/11 at the site, was that tree. And we thought about this about 3 weeks ago when we were coming. We knew we were coming here. But it's an invasive tree. You can't sell them anymore. You can't buy them for whatever that means. So, but we bought you a tree. And I think it's a pawpaw tree. I just heard that name for the first time yesterday, going to the nursery. Anyway, we have a tree here for you. So we'd like you to plant it. And remember the survivor tree that's in New York, because it's now at the World Trade Center site where the fountains are in New York. And we mentioned it in one of our broadcasts, and you guys wrote back to me about the tree. So it's our pleasure to, we have it here, so maybe when it gets a little nicer. I love this Ohio weather. Anyway, honey, would you like to say something? Yes, come on. Come on.
Thank you. I'm just pleased that you all enjoyed the book and you read the book. We can't thank you enough. Your letters and interaction with Jerry, it brings him to tears every time he reads the letters. You changed our lives. You will never know how much. We thank you. We thank you, Ms. Rosso, for everything you've done for us. Thank you, everybody.
It started with the helmet. I retired after 30 years in the New York City Fire Department, but prior to that I was 3 years a New York City police officer. And I realized after a little while that I wasn't made out to be a cop, all right? I didn't like locking up people or giving you a summons or anything like that. So I was on the list to become a firefighter, and I was called in 1968 and worked all over the city for almost 30 years. And I retired in 1997 and moved to Florida in 2000. And after about 5 months of driving my wife nuts, telling her that you're not putting the dishes in the right direction in the dishwasher, you know how us men are. Forks on the right, whatever, on the left. And so I saw in the Naples Daily News that they're going to have a refresher CPR course on a Saturday. So I went down and took the course, and a lady walked out on the stage, and she said she was the chief in charge of EMS, Emergency Medical Services. So after we did the mouth-to-mouth, the compressions and all that stuff, I asked her for a job. And she said, oh, I have somebody. I said, I was the press secretary to the New York City Fire Commissioner. And it was a pretty big job, but I'm only saying that. And she said, I have somebody that does the press for us. So I said, okay. So I met a press guy, and I'll move the story along. Next thing you know, following Monday, I come back from playing golf, and my wife said to me, well, Grandpa, I think you got a job. Somebody called from a fire district here, North Naples, wants to see you. I go over, he hires me immediately. And about 3 weeks later, he said to me, you know, we have a helmet here in one of our fire stations from New York City. I said, how did that happen? I'm here in Naples, Florida, and you have a fire helmet from New York City? So we ride over, and sure enough, up on the wall, I want to thank whoever did the beautiful picture of the helmet over here. Somebody did it. Thank you. That's great. And I looked up immediately, and I saw the 4-2. And I knew immediately it was from the South Bronx. That was the firehouse where my former boss, the fire commissioner, where he was a fireman. So I called him up and said, hey, I got hired again. And of course, you know how it is, brothers. You get abused right away. Who would hire you? We just got rid of you after 30 years. So he said, why don't you bring the helmet back? But we're having the firehouse renovated, and it won't be ready till the next year. So the whole year goes by, and in August, they said, you better make arrangements to come up. The firehouse is going to be rededicated, and that date would be September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11. But to us, it's just another day. So we flew up. George Kuntz, the man that gave us the helmet, it was his father's helmet that dated back to 1914. Two chiefs and myself and George, we flew to New York on September 8th. I took him to the firehouses where I worked, but I didn't think about going to the World Trade Center. No, why would I go down there? There they are. The two buildings are sitting there. So on the morning of September 10th, we went to the firehouse, where we were joined by about 100 of the former firefighters. They all came back to see the renovated firehouse. And I got reunited with Mayor Giuliani and a number of the people that I had worked with so many years. And at that time, who would have known that about 10 or 12 of my friends that were at that ceremony were all killed the next day when the attacks happened. So anyway, we did the ribbon cutting. We gave them back the helmet. In fact, it sits up there now in the South Bronx. It's been there for 22 years. Anyway, I don't want to tell you too much more about the helmet. But anyway, I got back. We were supposed to fly back the evening of September 10th at a LaGuardia airport. So we got to the airport and it started to rain. And it rained so hard that night that they closed all 3 New York airports, Newark, LaGuardia, and Kennedy. So we were then routed the next morning, September 11th, 2.5 hours before the attacks. I flew out on US Air, changing planes in Pittsburgh. And it was about 8:45, and one of the chiefs went down to the restroom, and there was a restaurant there, and he started screaming, Jerry, Jerry, come on, hurry up, come down here. And I went down, and I looked up, and that's when I saw that a plane had hit the first tower. And I knew immediately what my brother firefighters were doing. They were going up when everybody was coming up. So we tried to get on the plane. We probably stayed on the plane for 5 minutes. We backed out onto the runway, came right back. The pilot said, everybody, something like, everybody off the plane, the FAA has grounded all flights. So we got into the airport in Pittsburgh, and it was a mass pandemonium. People running all over, screaming, hollering. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. So we got online. I said, well, I'm not staying in Pittsburgh. No, knock on Pittsburgh. But I said, I got to go back to New York. So we all got online for a different car rental company. That took about an hour and a half. We get in the car, we turn the radio on, and we learned that, in fact, while we were in the airport, second plane had hit the second tower, a plane had crashed into the Pentagon, and another plane went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And here we are in Pittsburgh, and Shanksville is right near us. So we drove all night back to Naples, Florida. The following Friday, my wife and I had already had tickets booked to Philadelphia to attend our grandson's christening. So we did that, and then Sunday afternoon, I was able to reach the fire commissioner, and I told him I was in Philadelphia. And he said, would you come back, please? We need all the help we can, because we're still looking for people. This was, so I got back 6 days later. I was standing on the pile on West Street, looking at firemen that looked like little ants and the rescue workers climbing over all the debris, looking for possible survivors, which in fact turned out there was none. So that's kind of, I stayed up in New York till almost the end of October, but I had reached my limit. I had gone to countless funerals and wakes. I was half of the 343 firefighters I knew, so it was just weighing heavily. And I went back to Naples and went back to the fire department again. So I guess the message I want to say is I've seen a lot of a lot of things in my life, and I overcame a lot of adversity. I had cancer. I was detected with lung cancer from 9/11, and at the same time, my wife was battling breast cancer. So it took me a long time to tell her that I had cancer, and she did too. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You know, be brave. You know, keep it together. Don't get discouraged, no matter what's thrown at you. You know, there's always, and help people, yeah. And pick up your pants and get out there. That's what I always say. And to the firefighters, I talk to the kids, the students. We have a fire school in the North Naples Fire Department. And I always tell them, don't tell anybody what we have. Don't tell anybody about the job. We have the greatest job in the world. I don't know, I just met these men, but they're my brothers, right? And they know what I'm talking about. Okay, we gotta run. Everybody goes. Sounds like the firehouse, right, bros? Everybody goes. Not you, Chief. You stay right there. I gotta tease them. Anyway, so adversity, you know, please be brave, help people. You know, and I'll close by saying, my mother used to say, Gerald, it doesn't cost anything to be nice to people. And I've kind of carried that with me all my life. So if you can help, and again, I can't thank you enough, all of you, for your support, for your wonderful letters. I mean, I sit there in a chair at night and I cry. I can't even read them. But the message that we got out to you, and it's an honor, and indeed, I mean, we never thought that this book would bring this kind of response. Never. So again, if there's no questions, I'll turn it back to Mrs. Rosso. And again, Annie, thank you for putting this all together. And the ladies here, let's have a hand for them, please.
So we are going to take pictures. Classes will stand on the steps, and Mr. Sanford and Mrs. Griffith, my bad, will stand up here and we can get pictures with them.
I say right foot creep, ooh, walking with that heater. Look around, stay low, make sure they don't see you. Catch them bad, walk down, face them with that heater.